Photograph along with written copy, and Heritage's video classified specialist will enhance your message with graphics, colors, and borders. Heritage Cablevision brings this new service to you at a cost you can afford. Call today at 244-1314.
If you're just joining us here on CNN Tonight, I hope you'll stay with us. I'm Chris Curle.
I'm Don Farmer, and we'll bring you President Reagan's State of the Union message in just a moment.
First, a news update.
The brother of suspected TWA hijacker Mohammed Hamidi is in custody in West Germany tonight. Investigators believe that Ali Abbas Hamidi was either involved in or knew something about the kidnappings of the two West Germans in Lebanon. Some West German government officials believe that a third Hamidi brother may have masterminded the kidnappings. He has been identified as the chief of security for the Muslim extremist group known as the Hezbollah.
The British Foreign Office says that its embassy in Beirut is trying to determine whether hostage negotiator Terry Waite has been kidnapped himself. Waite dropped out of sight a week ago today while on a mission to free Western hostages. The official Kuwaiti news agency reports that Waite is being held against his will because a deal to free American hostages Terry Anderson and Thomas Sutherland fell through. Waite's boss, the Archbishop of Canterbury, says he is concerned for the safety of his man.
Pentagon officials say that the aircraft carrier John F. Kennedy and 11 ships in its task force will remain in the Mediterranean indefinitely. A battle group led by the aircraft carrier Nimitz also is in the Med and was to have replaced the Kennedy there on normal rotation over the weekend. One Pentagon source, unidentified, says it is a good assumption that the move is in response to the hostage situation in Lebanon. But the Pentagon would not comment.
In the Philippines tonight, about 200 rebel troops are refusing to give up their control of a television station in Manila. President Corazon Aquino says that her government forces have crushed a coup attempt by troops loyal to ex-President Ferdinand Marcos. Government soldiers today used water cannons to disperse demonstrators. One rebel soldier was killed and a dozen people were injured in the fighting.
Next year on CNN, the President's State of the Union message.
And we'll hear the Democrats' response, and we'll have reaction and analysis from members of the Congress.
And from a prominent futurist, Tom Peters, co-author of In Search of Excellence. Now to Washington and the State of the Union.
This is CNN, a service of Turner Broadcasting System. CNN's coverage of the State of the Union address is brought to you by Ford and your local Ford dealer, who invite you to see the 1987 Ford cars and trucks. Have you driven a Ford lately? Now, from Washington, Bernard Shaw.
Ronald Reagan is ready to do what all presidents must do, as mandated by the U.S. Constitution. Tonight, his audience will be the world for a number of domestic and international reasons. Critics have not run out of questions about the Reagan White House, and the president's backers have not run out of support. They say this man is at his best when his back is against the wall. Let's go now to CNN White House correspondent Frank Sesno for more on the mission to Capitol Hill.
Ronald Reagan emerges from a month of isolation this evening to deliver a State of the Union address that many of his advisors say is pivotal to the remainder of his presidency. Officials here say the president must show that in light of the Iran-Contra arms affair and his recent prostate surgery, he is still very much in charge, capable, and eager to lead. One official says the president's speech tonight will show that Reagan's ready to come roaring back. The president will only touch on Iran while striking the overall theme of American competitiveness. Bernie?
Thank you, Frank. Now, in a matter of seconds, here he is, James Malloy.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
James Malloy is the House doorkeeper, and he has just exercised one of the most cherished honors reserved exclusively for the House doorkeeper. Many freshman members of this 100th Congress are seeing this president up close for the first time as members of Congress. The Democratic leadership of the Senate and House: Robert Byrd, West Virginia, from the Senate; Thomas Foley of Washington behind Mr. Byrd, escorting the president to the rostrum. Members of the diplomatic corps are seated in seats just to the right of your screen, out of view. A lot of people haven't seen President Reagan in this town for several weeks, and they are anxious to see what he looks like in person. Perhaps you just saw the president wink at his wife up there in the gallery.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Congress, I have the high privilege and the distinct honor of presenting to you the President of the United States. Thank you, President. Thank you. You did that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, distinguished members of Congress, honored guests and fellow citizens, may I congratulate all of you who are members of this historic 100th Congress of the United States of America. In this 200th anniversary year of our Constitution, you and I stand on the shoulders of giants, men whose words and deeds put wind in the sails of freedom. However, we must always remember that our Constitution is to be celebrated not for being old, but for being young. Young with the same energy, spirit, and promise that filled each eventful day in Philadelphia State House. We will be guided tonight by their acts, and we will be guided forever by their words. Now, forgive me, but I can't resist sharing a story from those historic days. Philadelphia was bursting with civic pride in the spring of 1787, and its newspapers began embellishing the arrival of the convention delegates with elaborate social classifications. Governors of states were called Excellency. Justices and chancellors had reserved for them Honorable with a capital H. For congressmen, it was Honorable with a small h. And all others were referred to as the following respectable characters. Well, for this 100th Congress, I invoke special executive powers to declare that each of you must never be titled less than honorable with a capital H. Incidentally, I'm delighted you are celebrating the 100th birthday of the Congress. It's always a pleasure to congratulate someone with more birthdays than I've had. Now, there's a new face at this place of honor tonight. And please join me in warm congratulations to the Speaker of the House, Jim Wright. Mr. Speaker, you might recall a similar situation in your very first session of Congress 32 years ago, Then as now, the speakership had changed hands, and another great son of Texas, Sam Rayburn, Mr. Sam, sat in your chair. I cannot find better words than those used by President Eisenhower that evening. He said, "We shall have much to do together. I am sure that we will get it done, and that we shall do it in harmony and goodwill." Tonight, I renew that pledge to you, Mr. Speaker, and to Senate Majority Leader Robert Byrd, who brings 34 years of distinguished service to the Congress. May I say, though there are changes in the Congress, America's interests remain the same. And I am confident that along with Republican leaders Bob Michel and Bob Dole, this Congress can make history. 6 years ago, I was here to ask the Congress to join me in America's new beginning. Well, the results are something of which we can all be proud. Our inflation rate is now the lowest in a quarter of a century. The prime interest rate has fallen from the 21.5% the month before we took office to 7.5% today, and those rates have triggered the most housing starts in 8 years. The unemployment rate, still too high, is the lowest in nearly 7 years. And our people have created nearly 13 million new jobs. Over 61% of everyone over the age of 16, male and female, is employed, the highest percentage on record. Let's roll up our sleeves and go to work and put America's economic engine at full throttle. We can also be heartened by our progress across the world. Most important, America is at peace tonight, and freedom is on the march. And we've done much these past years to restore our defenses, our alliances, and our leadership in the world. Our sons and daughters in the services once again wear their uniforms with pride. But though we've made much progress, I have one major regret. I took a risk with regard to our action in Iran. It did not work, and for that I assume full responsibility. The goals were worthy. I do not believe it was wrong to try to establish contacts with a country of strategic importance or to try to save lives. And certainly it was not wrong to try to secure freedom for our citizens held in barbaric captivity. But we did not achieve what we wished, and serious mistakes were made in trying to do so. We will get to the bottom of this, and I will take whatever action is called for. But in debating the past, we must not deny ourselves the successes of the future. Let it never be said of this generation of Americans that we became so obsessed with failure that we refused to take risks that could further the cause of peace and freedom in the world. Much is at stake here, and the nation and the world are watching to see if we go forward together in the national interest or if we let partisanship weaken us. And let there be no mistake about American policy. We will not sit idly by if our interests or our friends in the Middle East are threatened, nor will we yield to terrorist blackmail. And now, ladies and gentlemen of the Congress, why don't we get to work? I'm pleased to report that because of our efforts to rebuild the strength of America, the world is a safer place. Earlier this month, I submitted a budget to defend America and maintain our momentum, to make up for neglect in the last decade. Well, I ask you to vote out a defense and foreign affairs budget that says yes to protecting our country. While the world is safer, it is not safe. Since 1970, the Soviets have invested $500 billion more on their military forces than we have. Even today, though nearly 1 in 3 Soviet families is without running hot water, and the average family spends 2 hours a day shopping for the basic necessities of life, their government still found the resources to transfer $75 billion in weapons to client states in the past 5 years. Clients like Syria, Vietnam, Cuba, Libya, Angola, Ethiopia, Afghanistan, and Nicaragua. With 120,000 Soviet combat and military personnel and 15,000 military advisors in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, can anyone still doubt their single-minded determination to expand their power? Despite this, the Congress cut my request for critical U.S. security assistance to free nations by 21% this year, and cut defense requests by $85 billion in the last 3 years. These assistance programs serve our national interests as well as mutual interests. And when the programs are devastated, American interests are harmed. My friends, it's my duty as president to say to you again tonight that there is no surer way to lose freedom than to lose our resolve. Today, the brave people of Afghanistan are showing that resolve. The Soviet Union says it wants a peaceful settlement in Afghanistan, yet it continues a brutal war and props up a regime whose days are clearly numbered. We are ready to support a political solution that guarantees the rapid withdrawal of all Soviet troops and genuine self-determination for the Afghan people. In Central America, too, the cause of freedom is being tested, and our resolve is being tested there as well. Here especially, the world is watching to see how this nation responds. Today, over 90% of the people of Latin America live in democracy. Democracy is on the march in Central and South America. Communist Nicaragua is the odd man out, suppressing the church, the press, and democratic dissent, and promoting subversion in the region. We support diplomatic efforts, but these efforts can never succeed if the Sandinistas win their war against the Nicaraguan people. Our commitment to a Western Hemisphere safe from aggression did not occur by spontaneous generation on the day that we took office. It began with the Monroe Doctrine in 1823 and continues our historic bipartisan American policy. Franklin Roosevelt said, "We are determined to do everything possible to maintain peace on this hemisphere." President Truman was very blunt. International communism seeks to crush and undermine and destroy the independence of the Americans. We cannot let that happen here. And John F. Kennedy made clear that communist domination in this hemisphere can never be negotiated. Some in this Congress may choose to depart from this historic commitment, but I will not. This year, we celebrate the second century of our Constitution. The Sandinistas just signed theirs 2 weeks ago and then suspended it. We won't know how my words tonight will be reported there for one simple reason. There is no free press in Nicaragua. Nicaraguan freedom fighters have never asked us to wage their battle, but I will fight any effort to shut off their lifeblood and consign them to death, defeat, or a life without freedom. There must be no Soviet beachhead in Central America. We Americans have always preferred dialogue to conflict. And so we always remain open to more constructive relations with the Soviet Union. But more responsible Soviet conduct around the world is a key element of the U.S.-Soviet agenda. Progress is also required in the other items of our agenda as well. Real respect for human rights and more open contacts between our societies and, of course, arms reduction. In Iceland last October, we had one moment of opportunity that the Soviets dashed because they sought to cripple our Strategic Defense Initiative, SDI. I wouldn't let them do it then. I won't let them do it now or in the future. This is the most positive and promising defense program we have undertaken. It's the path for both sides to a safer future, a system that defends human life instead of threatening it. SDI will go forward. The United States has made serious, fair, and far-reaching proposals to the Soviet Union, and this is a moment of rare opportunity for arms reduction. But I will need, and American negotiators in Geneva will need, Congress support. Enacting the Soviet negotiating position into American law would not be the way to win a good agreement. So I must tell you in this Congress, I will veto any effort that undercuts our national security and our negotiating leverage. Now, today we also find ourselves engaged in expanding peaceful commerce across the world. We will work to expand our opportunities in international markets through the Uruguay round of trade negotiations and to complete an historic free trade arrangement between the world's two largest trading partners, Canada and the United States. Our basic trade policy remains the same. We remain opposed as ever to protectionism because America's growth and future depend on trade. But we will insist on trade that is fair and free. We are always willing to be trade partners, but never trade patsies. Now, from foreign borders, let us return to our own, because America in the world is only as strong as America at home. This 100th Congress has high responsibilities. I begin with a gentle reminder that many of these are simply the incomplete obligations of the past. The American people deserve to be impatient because we do not yet have the public house in order. We've had great success in restoring our economic integrity, and we've rescued our nation from the worst economic mess since the Depression. But there's more to do. For starters, the federal deficit is outrageous. For years, I've asked that we stop pushing onto our children the excesses of our government. But the Congress finally needs to do is pass a constitutional amendment that mandates a balanced budget. And forces government to live within its means. States, cities, and the families of America balance their budgets. Why can't we? Next, the budget process is a sorry spectacle. The missing of deadlines and the nightmare of monstrous continuing resolutions packing hundreds of billions of dollars of spending into one bill must be stopped. And we ask the Congress once again, give us the same tool that 43 governors have, a line item veto so we can carve out the boondoggles and those items that would never survive on their own. I will send the Congress broad recommendations on the budget, but first I'd like to see yours. Let's go to work and get this done together. But now, let's talk about this year's budget. Even though I have submitted it within the Graham-Rudman-Hollings deficit reduction target, I have seen suggestions that we might postpone that timetable. Well, I think the American people are tired of hearing the same old excuses. Together, we made a commitment to balance the budget. Now, let's keep it. As for those suggestions that the answer is higher taxes, the American people have repeatedly rejected that shop-worn advice. They know that we don't have deficits because people are taxed too little. We have deficits because big government spends too much. Now, next month, I'll place 2 additional reforms before the Congress. We've created a welfare monster that is a shocking indictment of our sense of priorities. Our national welfare system consists of some 59 major programs and over 6,000 pages of federal laws and regulations on which more than $132 billion was spent in 1985. I will propose a new national welfare strategy, a program of welfare reform through state-sponsored, community-based demonstration projects. This is the time to reform this outmoded social dinosaur and finally break the poverty trap. Now, we will never abandon those who, through no fault of their own, must have our help. But let us work to see how many can be freed from the dependency of welfare and made self-supporting, which the great majority of welfare recipients want more than anything else. Next, let us remove a financial specter facing our older Americans. The fear of an illness so expensive that it can result in having to make an intolerable choice between bankruptcy and death. I will submit legislation shortly to help free the elderly from the fear of catastrophic illness. Now let's turn to the future. It's widely said that America is losing her competitive edge. Well, that won't happen if we act now. How well prepared are we to enter the 21st century? In my lifetime, America set the standard for the world. It is now time to determine that we should enter the next century having achieved a level of excellence unsurpassed in history. We will achieve this first by guaranteeing that government does everything possible to promote America's ability to compete. Second, we must act as individuals in a quest for excellence that will not be measured by new proposals or billions in new funding. Rather, it involves an expenditure of American spirit and just plain American grit. The Congress will soon receive my comprehensive proposals to enhance our competitiveness, including new science and technology centers and strong new funding for basic research. The bill will include legal and regulatory reforms and weapons to fight unfair trade practices. Competitiveness also means giving our farmers a shot at participating fairly and fully in a changing world market. Preparing for the future must begin, as always, with our children. We need to set for them new and more rigorous goals. We must demand more of ourselves and our children by raising literacy levels dramatically by the year 2000. Our children should master the basic concepts of math and science. And let's insist that students not leave high school until they have studied and understood the basic documents of our national heritage. There's one more thing we can't let up on. Let's redouble our personal efforts to provide for every child a safe and drug-free learning environment. If our crusade against drugs succeeds with our children, we will defeat that scourge all over the country. Finally, let's stop suppressing the spiritual core of our national being. Our nation could not have been conceived without divine help. Why is it that we can build a nation with our prayers, but we can't use a schoolroom for voluntary prayer? The 100th Congress of the United States should be remembered as the one that ended the expulsion of God from America's classrooms. The quest for excellence into the 21st century begins in the schoolroom, but must go next to the workplace. More than 20 million new jobs will be created before the new century unfolds. And by then, our economy should be able to provide a job for everyone who wants to work. We must also enable our workers to adapt to the rapidly changing nature of the workplace. And I will propose substantial new federal commitments keyed to retraining and job mobility. Over the next few weeks, I'll be sending the Congress a complete series of these special messages on budget reform, welfare reform, competitiveness, including education, trade, worker training and assistance, agriculture, and other subjects. The Congress can give us these tools, but to make these tools work, it really comes down to just being our best, and that's the core of American greatness. The responsibility of freedom presses us toward higher knowledge, and I believe moral and spiritual greatness. Through lower taxes and smaller government, government has its ways of freeing people's spirits, but only we, each of us, can let the spirits soar against our own individual standards. Excellence is what makes freedom ring, and isn't that what we do best? We're entering our third century now, but it's wrong to judge our nation by its years. The calendar can't measure America because we were meant to be an endless experiment in freedom with no limit to our reaches, no boundaries to what we can do, no end point to our hopes. The United States Constitution is the impassioned and inspired vehicle by which we travel through history. It grew out of the most fundamental inspiration of our existence, that we are here to serve him by living free, that living free releases in us the noblest of impulses and the best of our abilities, that we would use these gifts for good and generous purposes and would secure them not just for ourselves and for our children, but for all mankind. Over the years, and I won't count if you don't, nothing has been so heartwarming to me as speaking to America's young, and the little ones especially, so fresh-faced and so eager to know. Well, from time to time, I've been with them, they will ask about our Constitution. And I hope you members of Congress will not deem this a breach of protocol if you will permit me to share these thoughts again with the young people who might be listening or watching this evening. I've read the constitutions of a number of countries, including the Soviet Unions. Now, some people are surprised to hear that they have a constitution, and it even supposedly grants a number of freedoms to its people. Many countries have written into their constitution provisions for freedom of speech and freedom of assembly. But if this is true, why is the Constitution of the United States so exceptional? Well, the difference is so small that it almost escapes you. But it's so great, it tells you the whole story in just 3 words. We, the people. In those other constitutions, the government tells the people of those countries what they're allowed to do. In our Constitution, we, the people, tell the government what it can do, and it can do only those things listed in that document and no others. Virtually every other revolution in history has just exchanged one set of rulers for another set of rulers. Our revolution is the first to say the people are the masters and government is their servant. And you young people out there, don't ever forget that. Someday you could be in this room, but wherever you are, America is depending on you to reach your highest and be your best, because here in America, we the people are in charge. Just 3 words, some words. We the people. Those are the kids on Christmas Day looking out from a frozen sentry post on the 38th parallel in Korea, or aboard an aircraft carrier in the Mediterranean, a million miles from home, but doing their duty. We the people, those are the warm-hearted whose numbers we can't begin to count, who will begin the day with a little prayer for the hostages they will never know and MIA families they will never meet. Why? Because that's the way we are, this unique breed we call Americans. We the people. They're farmers on tough times, but who never stop feeding a hungry world. They're the volunteers at the hospital choking back their tears for the 100th time, caring for a baby struggling for life because of a mother who used drugs. And you'll forgive me a special memory. It's a million mothers like Nellie Reagan who never knew a stranger or turned a hungry person away from her kitchen door. We the people. They refute last week's television commentary, downgrading our optimism and our idealism. They are the entrepreneurs, the builders, the pioneers, and a lot of regular folks, the true heroes of our land who make up the most uncommon nation of doers in history. You know they're Americans because their spirit is as big as the universe, and their hearts are bigger than their spirits. We the people, starting the 3rd century of a dream and standing up to some cynic who's trying to tell us we're not going to get any better. Are we at the end? Well, I can't tell it any better than the real thing. A story recorded by James Madison from the final moments of the Constitutional Convention, September 17th, 1787. As the last few members signed the document, Benjamin Franklin, the oldest delegate at 81 years and in frail health, looked over toward the chair where George Washington daily presided. At the back of that chair was painted the picture of a sun on the horizon. And turning to those sitting next to him, Franklin observed that artists found it difficult in their painting to distinguish between a rising and a setting sun. Well, I know if we were there, we could see those delegates sitting around Franklin, leaning in to listen more closely to him. And then Dr. Franklin began to share his deepest hopes and fears about the outcome of their efforts. And this is what he said: "I have often looked at that picture behind the president without being able to tell whether it was a rising or setting sun. But now at length I have the happiness to know that it is a rising and not a setting sun." Well, you can bet it's rising, because my fellow citizens, America isn't finished. Her best days have just begun. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
President Reagan receiving the congratulatory plaudits of this assemblage in the House of Representatives chamber. His speech containing rushes of very, very intense articulateness. Bob Dole giving him a well-done pat on the back. The president told this audience, "I have one major regret." He was referring to the Iran-Contra affair. He said the Iranian action was a risk which did not work, and he said, "For that, I assume full responsibility. Serious mistakes were made," and he drew lots of applause when he said there was nothing wrong in an attempt to get the Americans out. On the hostage crisis underway now, the president said, "We will not sit idly by if our interests in the Middle East are threatened, nor will we yield to terrorist blackmail." On the Nicaraguan Contras, the freedom fighters, as this president always has referred to them, he warned this Congress that he will fight any effort to cut off funds which the president called the freedom fighters' lifeblood. He received a loud round of applause when he said, in a very declaring voice, "There must be no Soviet beachhead in Central America." The president continues making his way out of the chamber, escorted by Bob Michael of Illinois, the House Republican leader, continuing to get applause and the handshakes from people who are wishing him very well and congratulating him on his speech. On arms and defense, the president warned this Congress that he would veto any effort that he regarded as an attempt to undercut national security or the negotiating leverage of the American negotiators in Geneva. And on the budget, he got quite a bit of reaction, as you saw and heard from this Congress. He urged this Congress to pass a constitutional amendment mandating a balanced budget. And again, as he's done every year since he's been in office, the president called for that line item veto authority. It's 18 degrees outside in Washington. The wind chill factor is 7 degrees above zero. And our colleague claims that he's toasty warm. Let's see. Let's go to our White House correspondent, Frank Sesno. Frank?
Well, Bernie, President Reagan had hoped to prove to Congress and the nation that he could come roaring back from his recent prostate surgery and could come roaring back from some 3 months of controversy surrounding his dealings with Iran. And at least judging by his rhetoric and the strength of his voice and his general demeanor and appearance, he did just that. However, the president offered no new real words or real thoughts on the Iranian situation. He said that it was his major regret. But the fact of the matter is that the president did not tonight, nor has he before, acknowledged that the fundamental policy has been the problem. The fundamental policy being the sale of arms to Iran. The president wants to shift the emphasis to the future. And so the agenda that he put before the Congress tonight is heavily laden with domestic issues and foreign issues that pitch toward the future. Few of them, however, are dramatically different from things that have been proposed before. The president, nonetheless, demonstrated his self-deprecating humor. He enjoyed a few partisan taunts with the Congress, and he hopes that tonight can demonstrate that he is in charge, he is energetic, and he is capable of maintaining an activist presidency for the next 2 years. Bernie?
Thank you, Frank. From Lima to London, from Moscow to Manila, from Bonn to Bangkok, nations and their leaders are now studying this president's words very closely. Here's CNN Foreign Affairs correspondent Ralph Begleiter.
Bernie, in the Middle East, Arab leaders who might have hoped for some reassurance that the U.S. is actively interested in the peace process must be disappointed. The president's very brief mention of the Middle East suggests Mr. Reagan wishes those problems would just go away. He made no mention of the raging Persian Gulf War and offered an almost perfunctory pledge to help defend American friends in the Middle East. By contrast, and this is a glimpse into the foreign policy psyche of the Reagan administration, the president spent much more time railing against the communist government of Nicaragua. In what must be a disappointment to Central American leaders, Mr. Reagan almost dismissed diplomatic efforts to resolve the Central America conflict, vowing instead to fight any congressional effort to cut off aid to the Nicaraguan Contras. If Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev was looking for an outstretched hand from Washington in Mr. Reagan's speech, it wasn't there. It was a backhanded slap at the troubled Soviet economy, criticism of Moscow's defense strategy, and a fresh warning to Congress not to hand concessions to Moscow by enacting arms limits or restrictions on nuclear testing. Ralph Begleiter, CNN, reporting live from the State Department.
Thank you very much, Ralph. Here now from Atlanta, Don Farmer and Chris Curle.
Thank you, Bernie. The Democrats who now control both houses of the Congress are in an activist mood as the 100th Congress prepares to deal with the president's agenda.
We'll hear from the two top Democrats in the Congress with their response to Mr. Reagan's speech as our coverage continues here on CNN.
Last year, Ford Taurus was named Motor Trend Car of the Year. This year, Ford Thunderbird Turbo Coupe has been named Motor Trend Car of the Year. That's 2 years in a row for Ford. In fact, only Ford division has won this award 2 years running. But then, only Ford builds cars like these.
Have you driven a Ford lately?
A lot of people in Washington and around the country, and indeed around the world, were wondering just what Mr. Reagan would say tonight about the Iran-Contra arms affair. Here's part of what the president said. In fact, this is the paragraph, his first mention of it in his speech tonight, and you'll hear the reaction to it. Here's the president.
Though we've made much progress, I have one major regret. I took a risk with regard to our action in Iran. It did not work, and for that I assume full responsibility. The goals were worthy. I do not believe it was wrong to try to establish contacts with a country of strategic importance or to try to save lives. And certainly it was not wrong to try to secure freedom for our citizens held in barbaric captivity.
Now it's the Democrats' turn to offer a view of the State of the Union and to respond to the president's remarks tonight. And they are expected to talk, Chris, about some of the president's proposals tonight. They're expected to upbraid the president for not talking enough about such things as the plight of the American farmer, about such things as the Clean Water Bill, which the Congress passed, the president vetoed. Now the Democratic-controlled both houses of Congress. One has passed it. They're both expected to do so. They challenge the president to sign it this time.
And they want to make a few proposals of their own on those same subjects as well. They're also going to talk a little bit about what they already have accomplished so far in the 100th Congress.
In his speech tonight, the president acknowledged with compliments for Senator Byrd, who is the new majority leader because the Democrats are now in control, and the new speaker, Jim Wright of Texas. The Democrats are starting from the top tonight.
They're starting from the top with the Senate Majority Leader Robert Byrd of West Virginia and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Jim Wright of Texas.
We'll start now with the Speaker of the House, Jim Wright of Texas.
Good evening. Just a few minutes ago, I was in the House chamber standing behind the President. That's part of a Speaker's duty in this system where we put patriotism above partisanship. But the position of Speaker also has another constitutional duty. In fact, it dates all the way back to England in the 1370s. The idea of a Speaker was to have someone speak to the king in behalf of the House of Commons about the needs of the people. Several of the early English Speakers of the House in performing this duty were beheaded. When I think of that, I thank God for the Constitution and for those who wrote it. They created a system of checks and balances in which the President and the Congress can work together as equal partners in carrying out your will. The American people last November chose Democratic majorities to serve them in both houses of Congress. This doesn't mean we have to pursue 2 years of unrelieved conflict. There are many things on which we can all agree. There are some on which we honestly disagree. And there are some, no doubt, on which we can find avenues of reasonable compromise. Lest there be any question of our good faith, let me stress right up front that we'll be ready right now or at any time to sit down with the President and his top advisors to seek ways to stop piling up deficits by adopting a pay-as-we-go plan. No gimmicks, no selling off assets, no tampering with the Social Security Trust Fund. Just get every annual appropriation and every source of revenue right out on the table and see if we can make a match. Mr. President, you and I both have grandchildren. We need to stop sending them our bills. With new leadership in both the House and the Senate, I've asked Senate Majority Leader Robert Byrd to join me here in describing our vision for America. Senator Byrd will point out a way to build strength and credibility for America's foreign policy and respect for America's word. But you know, if America's going to be strong in the world, I think we have to be true to our ideals here at home. Words are not enough. What counts is action. Since this Congress convened 3 weeks ago today, we've already taken action on 3 major legislative programs that perform urgent duties for this land of ours. First is a clean water bill, renewing our commitment to clean up this nation's streams for this and future generations. Now, that bill's been passed and sent to the President. We hope he signs it. The second is a highway bill to complete the interstate highway system with straight, safe highways for American people. 1,500 needed highway projects in all of our states await the speedy completion of this bill to put some 165,000 Americans to work on this constructive undertaking. That bill's already passed the House, and it'll pass the Senate this week. Now, the third bill, which passed the House just today, is emergency help for the homeless. You know, we have twice the number of homeless families as just last year. People who huddle against the icy blasts of winter on street grates and in boxcars and culverts throughout America tonight. A warm place to sleep, a hot meal, a minimal medical attention. Sure, that's not too much to ask for America's own. These bills are not budget busters. All of them were within the budget resolution. And let me hasten to add that they had strong bipartisan support. Republicans have rallied with Democrats in a cooperative effort to get these bills passed in record time. The President said, let's get on with the job. Congress has been getting on with the job for the last 3 weeks. Throughout our history, America has grown stronger when we've faced our problems openly and overcome them together. 3 of our most urgent problems today are the trade deficit, the farm crisis, and the education crisis. In the past few years, we've been hit by a staggering trade deficit. Last year, that represented a drain on our economy of more than $2,600 per family. It has robbed us of more than 3 million jobs in the last 4 years. Every few days, another factory closes or announces a big layoff somewhere in America. Just 4 years ago, we were the world's largest creditor nation. Today, we're the world's largest debtor nation. Hey, we can do better than that. We welcome the administration's new words of concern about the trade deficit. For 3 years, we have implored the President to take action. Last year, the House passed a comprehensive trade bill, a huge bipartisan vote. Well, that bill died without any action in the Republican Senate, and the problem grew steadily worse. Well, this year, large majorities in both houses are determined to act, and we will act. We believe in free trade, and we just think it has to be fair trade. America has a right to insist that other countries treat American-made products the same way we treat their products. That isn't protectionism, that's reciprocity. But more than that, we must have a conscious government policy to promote American products. You know what our #1 export is from the Port of New York? I'm almost ashamed to say it. It's not machinery. It's not computers. You know, it's junk, scrap metal, mostly from junked automobiles. If that isn't bad enough, you know what the second biggest export is? It's paper, waste paper, trash. That's shipped to the Far East and made into cardboard boxes for the foreign-made televisions and clothing and toys and shoes that they send back to sell to us from our #1 port in the most industrialized country in the world. Our 2 leading exports are junk metal and scrap paper. We need strong incentives to invest in those things that modernize and improve our aging American industrial plants. Make them more competitive and improve productivity. Then made in the USA, once again can be the badge of quality and value throughout the world. That's our #1 congressional objective this year. Our second major problem is the plight of America's farm families. America's farm economy is in a desperate condition. There were more farm foreclosures in the last 2 years than at any time since the Great Depression. Thousands of family farms right now hang by a thread. Now, the trouble is that the administration has seemed not to care, or perhaps just not to understand. In 1985, the government put up $4.5 billion of public money to bail out one big bank in Chicago. But the president vetoed a much smaller bill of loan guarantees that would have allowed local banks to give many thousands of America's farm families a breathing spell to save themselves from foreclosure. Because of that veto, thousands of families lost their farms. We don't have to spend more to do better. Too much of our $25 billion support program goes to a few huge corporate enterprises, not family farms at all. Our system of individual family farms has made us the best fed nation on earth. And we think that's worth preserving. And that's another of our Democratic congressional objectives this year. The third is to revitalize American education for all of America's children, until once again we lead the world in literacy, in learning, research, job skills. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. First, let's hear from Majority Leader Robert Byrd about America's place in the world and how we improve it and preserve it.
Thank you, Jim. Jim Wright and I are the new leaders in Congress. He in the House, I in the Senate. We're from rural America. We're veterans of the most dramatic debates of our time. We've seen this country in triumph, and we've seen it in depression. And we know what a resilient and trusting people we are. The administration's recent dealings with Iran have cast a long shadow over this country. There's a gathering sense of mistrust. The sale of arms to Iran in direct contradiction to our stated foreign policy raises real questions about trust. But it also raises real doubts about competence. Without competence and a good measure of common sense, government will have a tough time earning the nation's trust. And government without trust is government without power. That's why so many find the Iranian affair so troubling. It was a breach of faith, both here and abroad. Like people, a nation is only as good as its word. If our word is good, our nation is strong. If our word is in doubt, our nation is weak. We do not hold the free world together at gunpoint. It is a mutual trust that has bound us, a respect for one another, and a common commitment to human dignity and to peace. This Democratic Congress wants to work with the President and the administration in advancing our national interests abroad. We need a coherent foreign policy that aggressively seeks to get the peace movement back on track in the Middle East. A policy that does not just offer the Contras as a solution to our problems in Central America. A foreign policy that utilizes all of the resources available to us, diplomatic, political, economic, and military, to achieve America's goals in the world. For the moment, our allies and our friends are bewildered, and they question our motives. They wonder how we can rail against terrorism and then sell arms to terrorists. And many of you are wondering too. Foreign policy is too crucial in today's world to be decided in the dark. Tonight, Americans are once again held hostage by terrorists. We must stand together and have the courage of our convictions. Americans love liberty and human freedom. All of us want to see our hostages brought home. But if risks must be taken, then all Americans must understand those risks, and all Americans must take them together. Bold actions can succeed, but they must be based on carefully considered and sound judgment. The President owes us all a more open debate on foreign policy in return for our trust. And we owe our allies and friends a firmer handshake in return for theirs. The administration has the obligation to tell we, the American people, exactly what led to the arms for hostage deal and what happened to accountability in the White House. And meanwhile, the world moves on, and so do the nation's concerns. The Democratic agenda, as Jim Wright has just outlined, and will outline some more, is as short as it is monumental. Set the deficit on a downward trend, regain our prominence in world markets as creators, producers, and exporters, and make this country the most secure in the world. We live in a hostile world. Behind the outer perimeter of diplomacy, America must have ready an awesome force to meet force. Democrats are committed to a strong defense. Real national defense isn't just measured by missiles or destroyers. We know we have to spend billions, but we must manage our defense dollars better to really get our money's worth and still meet the world on the terms that are offered, whether it's terrorism, a conventional war, or a nuclear threat. While we must maintain a strong defense, we must also work to reduce the risk of nuclear war. Democrats have backed the President's efforts to negotiate a tough, verifiable, and lasting arms control agreement. It is a pursuit, like balancing our foreign policy, that must override partisan differences. Congress wants a tough arms treaty to be our monument to the last half of this century. And I would caution any adversary that questions that resolve. We want to work with the administration to see that sound, solid proposals are put on the negotiating table, proposals that do not leave the United States and the rest of the free world at a disadvantage. Right now, Congress wants to get on with the business of governing. We're too well aware that when Congress and the President do not work together, the nation's business goes undone. The President was elected to govern. His is the final signature on our work. His is the final word echoed around the world. Without the President as an equal and active partner, Congress is stymied. It was all laid out in the Constitution just 200 years ago. The creation of Congress as the people's branch. The concept of checks and balances between Congress and the President. The burden of bipartisan consensus. It has taught us over the years that government is at its best when Congress and the President hitch themselves to the same wagon and pull together in the same direction. No force abroad is as great as America united. The last 2 years of the Reagan presidency need not be a period of discord. A weakened president serves no one. A strong president serves us all. We can rebound from the Iranian debacle. We can rebuild our foreign policy. We can rethink our military budget. But we must begin by winning back the nation's trust. And Jim Wright and I are committed to helping the President to regain that trust. With God's help, we stand ready to do our part.
You know, throughout our history, America stood for something. Like a great locomotive that pulls a long train, a powerful ideal has pulled our country forward all these 200 years. We believe that each generation should do a little better than the one before. Be better educated, better employed, better housed, have more opportunity, a better chance for our children. That's the American dream, isn't it? And now we see a disturbing new reality, not upward mobility, but downward mobility. The average 30-year-old American today is making 26% less than his older brother did just 10 years ago. The average 45-year-old couple is finding it harder, not easier, to send their children to college. Last year, the Japanese, with just half our population, graduated half again more scientists and engineers than we did. The Soviet Union graduated more technicians than we did. That's just not good enough. That could be suicidal. We're not satisfied with educational mediocrity. It isn't good enough when other countries outrank us in literacy. High school graduates cannot read. Education is the fuel that runs the locomotive. The 100th Congress is determined to restore education to its rightful place at the very pinnacle of our national priorities. President Reagan spoke of education tonight in glowing terms. You know, the sad truth is that his budget, delivered to Congress earlier this month, would actually cut our commitment to education by about 28%. With more technical skills required by young people entering the job market, the White House wants to abolish vocational education. The President's budget cuts in student assistance would make college virtually impossible next year for about 3 million young Americans who want to go to college. You know what that is? That's unilateral disarmament. We simply cannot underfund education and do anything positive about the trade deficit or even about defense. For 6 years, this administration has doubled Pentagon spending and actually shrunk educational opportunity. However splendid our weapons, we won't be first in defense or first in trade if we settle for second best in education. The very best financial investment this country ever made was the GI Bill of Rights at the end of World War II. It sent an entire generation of Americans to college, and our country's been reaping the dividends ever since. That program, simply in greater taxes paid by higher earnings, has actually repaid the Treasury about $20 for every dollar invested. Well, the President sometimes likes to criticize Congress for what he calls big spending. But you know, the plain truth is that for the 6 years of this administration, Congress actually has appropriated less in total spending than Mr. Reagan has asked us to appropriate. I mean, the basic disagreement is not over how much we spend. It's where we spend it, what we get for it, and who pays the bill, ourselves or our children. The President's newest budget would cut $5.5 billion from the education of our young and spend that same amount on research for just one new weapon. It asks more for the Pentagon.